Let's look at the polls. Donald Trump has recorded at least a 50% approval rating in the last 3 surveys. Just this week's Economist YouGov poll reveals that 50% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of the presidency. And this comes after a CBS poll found that 70% of Americans believe that Trump is delivering on his promises, which is, of course, painful for outlets like MSNBC that have to cover this. They've gone with the headline, Trump's policies are hurting Americans, but he's winning the PR battle. Look, it's been a month since Donald Trump has been in office. What's your sense of what's going on the ground, how people are feeling about this administration?
Really just a month. I mean, that's kind of hard to imagine. It feels like he's been president for at least a year at this point for all he's gotten done. I mean, I would say that in this 1 month, he's accomplished more than Biden's handlers accomplished in 4 years. And there's a really interesting factor that we look at in polling, and that is not just approval of the job the individual's doing. It's also looking at how favorable or unfavorable is that person. And I would say historically, those numbers are nearly identical. So if 42% of people are favorable of a candidate, they're usually about 42% approving of the job. One thing that we've noticed in our polling is there's actually about a 4-point delta in net difference between favorability, unfavorability, and then job approval and disapproval. And that's something that in 15 years of doing polling here in the United States that I've not really experienced. And I think it speaks to the fact that there's a group of individuals who don't necessarily like Donald Trump, but they're definitely willing to put up with a dislike of him as a person in order to get the benefit of what he is doing as a leader of this country. There's also a group of individuals that we tracked from our exit poll that we did on election day, and that was people who had not voted in the 2020 election, or they voted for Biden or somebody else, but not Trump. And then those voters who fit in that category, but voted for Trump this time. And in talking about these spending cuts, what's fascinating is that subset of voters, even though it's not very big, they are 61% supportive of these reductions in federal workforce, in cutting federal agencies, in reducing government spending. And I think it tells you a lot about where the Republican Party is headed, that the types of people that are turned off by these cuts and by what Trump is doing are the exact people that are turning themselves into a minority on the left side of the aisle in the U.S.
This analysis from CNN I found really interesting, explaining that Trump and the GOP have actually reshaped America's voter base.
Donald Trump and the Republican Party has changed the electorate. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at party identification, Democrats versus Republicans. You go back to 2017, 5 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. You go to 2021 when Joe Biden was starting out, look at that, 6 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. But look at what's happened in February of 2025. Look at this. Republicans, there are more Republicans in the electorate than there are Democrats. Republican +2. So Donald Trump and the Republicans have remade the electorate. They've turned some people over from being Democrats or independents to become Republicans. New folks have entered the electorate who are more Republican leaning. And so when you combine that with the fact that Republicans are really, really behind Donald Trump, all of a sudden you get a winning recipe whereby you break the normal rules of politics and give Donald Trump that positive net approval rating when he had pretty much a consistently negative one in term number 1.
It's interesting, even being here in Australia, you can really feel the shift. You can really feel that this has been a huge trend that we've seen just, I suppose, the last year. Do you think that trend will be here to stay?
I do. There's definitely work on the parties of the center right around the world to go build relationships with these new voter bases. If I told you that the Republicans were going to be the party of the working class, the party of minority voters, and the party of young voters, if I just made that statement 30 years ago, I would have gotten laughed off a stage and cut off a television show. But that is who is becoming the Republican Party. And the Democratic Party and parties on the left globally, because we do work all over the world, including Australia, are becoming more and more marginalized by only the party of coastal elites and of the highly educated. And so Republicans can't take this for granted going into the midterms next year. They've got to get out there and actually actually build their own brand and relationship and say, this is who we are as Republicans. We're not just with Donald Trump. This is what we believe. And that's going to be what is the long-term impact of Donald Trump's election. And I do believe it will continue.
It's interesting. Hollywood celebrities still don't seem to get the MAGA movement at all. Here is Tom Hanks appearing on SNL, acting to be a racist Trump supporter while wearing a MAGA hat and refusing to shake someone's hand. Just take a look.
Now, speaking of church, can I say something? If more folks went to church, we wouldn't be in this mess we're in now.
You know what? I agree with you, Doug. I'd like to shake your hand, sir. Here we go.
No,
Oh, no.
like that.
Oh, no, it's just a handshake. Yeah, it's just a handshake. Yeah, all right. You're welcome in Black Jeopardy anytime. Yeah, you take it.
Terrible acting, a terrible joke. You know, when is Hollywood, the actors in Hollywood, those on the left and the far left, going to come up with some new material?
What I think is even more interesting than that is the fact that it's actually cool to be conservative now. I'm 40 years old, and when I got into politics in high school, I was the dork because the Democrats were the cool kids. And what's really funny about this skit is, one, Tom Hanks is a pretty good actor, and though I hate his politics, I got to admit he makes some really good movies, is the fact that white voters are not who elected Donald Trump. So the margin that Donald Trump got out of white voters in 2020 is exactly the same margin that he got out of white voters in 2024. It was actually Hispanic and Black voters, mostly men, but it's some women too, that moved Donald Trump across the finish line. So for them to make a skit like that is so disingenuous and shows so how out of touch they are when it was actually non-white voters who put Donald Trump in the White House.
Excellent point. I think someone needs to tell them. The problem is these celebrities do have some influence. You know, it has dropped a lot. I don't think anyone really cares what Taylor Swift has to say about politics, but there are still some people out there that seem to idolize these Hollywood celebrities and believe that Donald Trump is such a danger. Here's this lefty proudly claiming that should rather choose violence against Trump supporters.
Woke up and chose violence against the Red Hats today. I will wake up and choose violence against the Red Hats every day.
Oh my goodness, absolutely insane. What do you make of it?
Well, that's also the party who wants to end threats to democracy by basically suspending democracy, like trying to get rid of the mayor of New York just because they don't like him. And I'll tell you a personal story is I have a 4th grade son who is very into Donald Trump, and we live in an area that Kamala Harris won at 80% of the vote. And he wore his red MAGA hat to school the day after the inauguration. And one of his teachers said, "You have to take that off. You're not allowed to wear that in this school." And the librarian actually came to his aid and told this other teacher, "You're not allowed to tell kids what they can and can't wear in gray. You're allowed to wear that as much as you want." And to me, that one small moment shows that they're even in deep blue insanity areas like where I live, that there are folks who are starting to open up to see that the left is totally unhinged and they're complete hypocrites in what they say, like what this woman just did here in the clip.
Absolutely. Look, finally, I want to talk to you about Barron Trump, because the president of New York University's college Republicans was forced to resign for calling Barron Trump an oddity on campus. Kaya Walker told Vanity Fair that the 18-year-old just goes to class and he goes home. I think, look, it seems like a fair outcome that she was forced to resign.
I'll take the contrarian view here. And I think as Republicans, we need to lean further into free speech. And that means when we don't agree with people, that we can still say you have the right to say that, as long as it's not violence like that crazy liberal in the clip that you showed beforehand. But is that the right thing to say about the president's son? No. Was it a smart thing to say? No, it was completely stupid. But she should have the right to say that, and we shouldn't be canceling people out because they make dumb statements.
Fair enough. Brent Buchanan, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Really appreciate you making the time.
Thank you.